歡迎各位觀眾收睇星期一嘅週一長談節目，我係你哋呢一集嘅節目主持人梁英年。喺呢集嘅節目裏邊咧，我會同大家去睇一個聯邦事務，係關於咧係加拿大一個好重要嘅議題，係環保同埋咧氣候轉變嘅。咁我今日請嚟嘅嘉賓咧係嚟自 South Surrey White Rock 呢一個區嘅國會議員 Kerry-Lynne。咁佢除咗係代表呢個區嘅國會議員之外咧，佢亦都係聯邦官式反對黨，即係咧聯邦保守黨嘅環境同埋氣候轉變嘅評論員，或者咧係叫做影子內閣部長嘅。So welcome to the program. How should I call you? Shadow Minister Kerry-Lynne?
Yes, that is my title right now. Yes.
Now, some people think it's a critic of this portfolio. But you are a shadow minister. Why sometimes people think it is just a critic of the portfolio, or it's a shadow minister? What's the difference?
Well, in our system, we have the loyal opposition, who is the next party. They're really the government in waiting.
So the Conservative Party of Canada is the loyal official opposition party.
Exactly. And so in that system, they appoint a cabinet just like the government does, and we are called shadow ministers because if we were government, these are the people who would form the cabinet. But it is a critic role as well. And then you have a third party, the third largest party right now is the Bloc Québécois. Fourth party right now is NDP. And they also have critics whose job it is to look at the government's record in this area. So I'm the shadow minister for the environment and climate change. It is a complex subject, and it is my job to help with Conservative Party policies and also to criticize the government where we feel they're not doing a good enough job.
Now, you were in the government before when the
right.
Conservative Party was the government.
That's right.
And you were a minister.
Yes.
Is that the reason why you appointed as a shadow minister, but you were not in environment portfolio? You were in revenue or business type.
That's right.
But is that a particular reason you were appointed as the shadow minister for the environment and climate change?
So when you're in government, the Prime Minister appoints the cabinet. When you're official opposition, the leader of Her Majesty's official opposition makes those decisions. So I don't always share with you all their reasons, but I was told that because I was a minister in government before, and they know that I'm a hard worker and that I learn well what my areas are, because I was in several before. I was in justice, then national defense, and then revenue. And I was the minister, associate minister of national defense and minister of revenue. That they had confidence in me to take on a complex subject like the environment and climate change.
Yeah, because you are a lawyer, you have the experience in government in different portfolio.
That's right.
Is there a reason also because the minister from the Liberal government, the minister is from North Vancouver, and you are in Surrey, you're close. It's easier for the two of you to fight.
Well, we often are on the same airline going back and forth from Ottawa to Vancouver, so that's true. And we're certainly, I was at the UN Global Conference COP25 in Madrid in December, and he was there. And I was at Global 2020, a big environmental conference here in Vancouver, and he was there. So definitely we're in the same places often at the same time.
Yeah, so you have more opportunity to talk to him on the issue.
Exactly.
Now, every time when the government appoint a minister in the government, the Prime Minister gave mandate letter to the ministers. And you must have already seen the mandate letter for the Minister of Environment and Climate Change. Do you agree basically what they are trying to achieve in that mandate letter?
Well, also as shadow minister, we're given a mandate letter from our leader.
By the opposition leader.
That's right. So we're, this is a standard thing saying from the leader, I'm appointing you to this. I want you to prioritize these things and look at it. So the mandate letter for environment and climate change is quite long.
Right.
And there's certainly ambitions in there, including to meet the Paris Climate Accord targets by 2030, and in fact they're talking about being net zero in emissions by 2050 here in Canada, which is something some other countries like the UK, for instance, has adopted, 2050 net zero emissions. So I would say that's some of the main part of that mandate letter. And for us, my mandate letter is also about championing Canadian technology, the Canadian clean brand, and sharing that knowledge with the world.
Now, you talk about the target of the Paris Accord is to have a target by 2030. What is that target, and do you think the government mandate letter, what they're trying to do, will achieve that target by 2030?
The Paris Accord targets is to reduce our emissions by 30% below 2005 levels by 2030. So they're ambitious targets, and we believe in the Conservative Party and the opposition that there is not a clear pathway that the government has set out to achieve that. We believe there needs to be more done in terms of championing Canadian clean technology, investing in our technology that is already, some of it is quite new and growing, and some of it has been there for a while. We believe a lot of it is going unrecognized. And also to encourage individual responsibility through our suggestions were green renovation house credit, for instance. If you put in triple pane windows in your house, you should be able to get back some of that expenditure as an incentive, or you put in a more energy efficient hot water system, things like that, because we trap a lot of CO2 in our buildings. And many of our buildings, I just had people from the universities come and see me this week in Ottawa, for instance. SFU, UBC, university campuses have a lot of big buildings in them, and they're very interested in doing infrastructure upgrades and improvements that are environmentally friendly. We also believe in green tax credits. If people are doing a good job, we'd like to see them get some credit for that. And also with the heavy emitters, the Liberal government is exempting them from the targets. And we say, no, that is not what you should be doing. Heavy emitters should be held to a standard, and if they go past that, they should have to put money into green technology and green jobs. In other words, not the government putting the money in, but the heavy industrial emitters putting their money into improvements.
Now, you mentioned about the technology side of things to reach the target. I think the Liberal government, they're also trying to do something about innovation or technology to help us to achieve that target. But one other thing you haven't mentioned is the stake. The Liberal government is using a big stake, the carbon tax, to beat people into reducing their carbon emission, and they're going to increase the carbon tax even more because they want to achieve that target. Yeah. And the Conservative Party of Canada was against it in the last election. Is the Conservative Party, and from your portfolio, are you still against carbon tax? And if not carbon tax, just by having new technology, can we achieve that target?
So we have what we call a real plan for the environment. It actually has its own website, and people can go look at it, a realplan.ca. And in that plan, we have designed all kinds of ways to reach the Paris targets that do not include a carbon tax. We don't believe in a carbon tax because, first of all, it's a regressive tax, meaning that if you're lower income, if you're students, it hurts you more than people who have more wealth. Because people with wealth can make choices, and it doesn't necessarily change their behavior. The whole idea of a carbon tax, as you said, the stick, it's meant to force people into a different type of behavior. But right now it's at $20 a ton. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has said it would have to be much higher, more like $50 a ton at least to reach the targets. But the eco-fiscal review of it said, no, it has to be more like $210 a ton.
From 20 raised to $210.
$110. And some people have said it would have to be $300 a ton to achieve these Paris targets through a tax. So what we're saying is that means that the price of gas and other, almost everything that we buy is going to go up so high that it becomes very punitive, and it isn't necessary if you take the other steps we're talking about. So we have many ideas on that. I've mentioned some of them. A green patent credit is another one. Mm-hmm. There's many ways to achieve this, but we also have to look at it from a global point of view. Canada, in our population, is a small country. We're responsible for about 1.5% of global emissions.
So that means Canada is responsible for 1.3% of all the carbon dioxide emitted into the atmosphere in the world.
In the world. So we're small.
Right.
We're a small potato in all of that. And that doesn't mean we can't be leaders and innovators. We want to be looked at. But our assessment, our environmental standards that are looked at when we do assessments on projects are some of the highest in the world already. And we want to look to ways that we can contribute to the global fight with respect to protecting our environment. And we can't do it all here because we're not emitting at the level of some other countries. But we can help get away from coal technology, for instance. We can help with wastewater management systems. There's many innovations here that we can take to the world and say, you can reduce your emissions. We can't do it alone, and even if we tried to do it alone, it wouldn't make enough of a difference.
When you talk about this, it's important because we have two major projects in Canada. One is the Trans Mountain Pipeline, is to ship oil from one place to the other. And then the other one is about the LNG, the natural gas, the coastal link that we are talking about in BC. Now let's talk about the TMX, the Trans Mountain Pipeline. The government purchased the pipeline from private sector. Canadians now own that pipeline. And the government said they have already go through all the legal process to have this pipeline built. Are you sure the government is doing that and we will have the pipeline and have the oil flow very quickly?
Well, first of all, when they ran in the election, they never said they were going to buy a pipeline. I don't think anyone expected that.
Right.
And also, the parliamentary budget officer has said they paid $1 billion too much. They spent $4.5 billion to buy it of our taxpayer money, and it should have been $3.5 billion. So we have a problem with that as Conservatives. We don't think it should have been taken out of the public sector, where the risk is taken by the public sector, and made a government-owned project. Now, they made that decision, they did it. Since they did it, we've had very little progress. We've had very little progress in part because our BC government sued and they lost that lawsuit. Now another lawsuit has been lost and says, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Now we know from just last week that the cost of going ahead has skyrocketed. Because of the delays, the cost is going to be much, much bigger. I think it's 4 times. It's
So we overpaid $1 billion to purchase it.
And now, then we delayed.
We delayed it, so the cost to build it is even more.
That's right. And our concern right now is that the federal Liberal government has said they want to make UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, they want to make it federal law. And we believe that in the spirit of reconciliation, that is a strong aspirational document. However, we're concerned about what they call the fine print. And one of the clauses in that is that for any project to go ahead, every affected party must give free, prior, and informed consent. We are concerned, and we have been challenging the government over the last few weeks, whether that gives a veto to one group. So say you have all the municipalities that are nearby are in favor. 40 First Nations are in favor. But one First Nation says no. If UNDRIP is law, does that mean it doesn't go anywhere? That would be giving a veto. And we want the government, if they're going to bring in this legislation, to make it very clear that no one group has a veto. They're not answering our questions. Our questions make them uncomfortable, but this is a very important question. The Coastal Gas Link, as we know, is causing huge disruptions right now in Canada. Our trains have come to a halt. There were protests at BC Legislature. There's highway protests that have shut down highways. And we believe that there is a limit. Free speech is important. The right to peaceful protest is important. But there comes a time when the government has to act in the national best interest. We think they should have done that with TMX and get it going sooner. They should have said, this is a project in the nation's interest and we have to move forward. Their delays have cost us a lot of money. This is the same here. We need to take action on these protests now. Okay to have them, but not to the point where it's freezing our ability to get goods and services to market. There's a third big project, Tech Frontier. It's in northern Alberta. The federal Liberal government has to decide by the end of February whether they're going to let it go ahead or not. It has passed all the environmental assessments. It's recommended to go ahead. There are many, many First Nations that are counting on the work and the training and the shared investment and prosperity. And the government is delaying making the decision till the very last day, which is the end of February. And there is talk that instead of letting it go ahead, they're going to give some money to the Alberta government. But people in Alberta don't want a handout, they want jobs. And it has passed all the standards.
So the federal government want to buy out that project, don't let it go ahead. So people...
Well, they wouldn't buy it out. They would just not let it go ahead.
Oh.
And there's talk of them giving some money to the Alberta government instead. But that doesn't help people with their jobs. And it's a very, very important project that would see hundreds of people employed over many years.
No, one way or the other, we still see people driving their gasoline-powered vehicle. We still need that for a lot of energies for home heating or from other use. We cannot shut down all our oil industry right away. There should be a transition time. If we all agree, we need to go to an alternative energy down the road. We cannot stop using it. If we do that continuously, we don't make any more oil in Canada, we don't do it. And we have to buy it from somewhere else, probably Saudi Arabia. And we have to ship all those oil from Saudi Arabia to Canada for people to use before we can find a way to use alternative energy.
This is a very good question that you asked, because I feel we are not recognizing that we are in transition. Even if we all agree that by 2050
Zero emission.
we'll have no more oil, particularly. I mean, actually, natural gas is a very efficient, lower emitting energy form of energy. But let's just say we have no more use of oil in 30 years. We're not there now. So what is happening is we are not getting our Canadian resources to market, and other countries are continuing the way they have always been. And Canada, which could be energy self-sufficient, is buying our oil from other places. Our purchases of oil from Saudi Arabia have gone up 7 times over the last decade, because we still need the fuel, as you said, right now. While we are changing the economy, while we are looking for alternatives, we need to continue using oil and gas.
We are the 3rd largest oil reserve in the world, but we are not using it, and we are buying it somewhere else for Canadians to use it.
We are also not refining it. So Alberta oil right now comes through by train, usually. It goes down to Cherry Point in Washington where it is refined, and we buy it back at world prices. So even our own oil, we're not getting it to our own markets at a price that makes sense for an oil-producing country. So these things, to me, they're not common sense. We need to go forward with jobs and prosperity for the Canadian people and balance that with our love for the planet, which we all have, and our love for the environment. But you can't love the environment and not love the people. I mean, it doesn't work. We have to do our best for both. And, you know, people have been adapting to the environment for millennia. Mm-hmm. I believe in human ingenuity. I believe that we all want the same thing, and we all want to live happy, healthy lives. We want our children to have clean air, clean water, the very best. Mm-hmm. And we can work towards that. Plastics is a good example. We are concerned about single-use plastics, right. And the government says they're going to move towards giving us a list. Well, they've been in power for 4.5 years. We still don't have a list of what they want to ban. The minister said a couple of weeks ago in Ottawa that they'll have a list by next year. We should have that list already, and we should be moving forward. Plastic straws are a good example. We talked about this. Now they create straws out of sugarcane and plant-based products. All right, let's get on with it.
Now, in Canada, we have a problem. We have environment minister provincially, federally. The Western Indian nation, one of the issues is the environment, the energy sector. Mm-hmm. So how can the two levels of government share the responsibility on the environment and climate change? So we have one set of policy or one direction that we are all going together.
Well, one of the things the Conservative government did before is when it comes to environmental assessments, there were provincial protocols, and then there were federal standards. And what the Conservative government said is whichever one is the most stringent, requires the most, should be the one used. But we shouldn't make companies go through two processes. We should merge it and go with the strongest set of standards. Industry and investment need certainty. That's not a surprise. And the more confusing it is to get a project off the ground, the less investment in Canada we will see. People have options. I was told by someone the other day in my office they're doing their next investment in Brazil, not Canada, because they can't be sure how the government is going to treat this. We all have a part to play. We can certainly, both provincial and federal, champion technology, try and get our resources to market. But we have to agree that we want to be leaders and we want to be part of the global solutions. Because as I said at the outset, Canada just doing in Canada things, that's not enough. Mm-hmm. And it's actually not fair because we are losing jobs here in Canada. Industries are losing market share to other countries that have lower standards, more emissions, and then they're selling it back to us in Canada. So that is not reducing global emission.
Oh, that is a difficult issue. We have two levels of government, and now even the municipal government, just like Vancouver, they're trying to get their hand into this environment file. And you just talk about the federal Liberal government. They're considering to pass that UN Declaration of Indigenous Rights. Yes. That may create another level of barrier for anything to develop in Canada. Well, time is short. We have to end our discussion here today. Dear. So thank you very much for coming.
It's gone by so quickly.
Thank you
very much for your knowledge of this subject.
嗱，今日咧係好多謝咧係聯邦官式反對黨嘅影子環境同埋氣候轉變部長咧 Kerry-Lynne Findlay 咧上嚟同大家係講下關於加拿大嘅環境同埋氣候轉變應該係點樣去處理一個咁辣手、咁複雜嘅問題嘅。